When thinking about retirement, it's always helpful to keep your end result in mind, a worry-free life in your golden years and the resources to enjoy them to the fullest. This can include living comfortably and independently, being able to care for yourself and afford health care, splurging every now and then because you're financially stable, and getting to visit your grandkids whenever you want. Obviously, in order to have no regrets, we think you should save earnestly for retirement and start early. But that doesn't mean focusing on retirement at the expense of all else. Namely, if you have debt like credit card debt or a car loan, pay that off first. Generally, this debt comes with very high interest rates and does the most harm to your credit score. It's best to get it out of the way. Next, you should have an emergency fund that has 6 to 9 months of your living expenses. This ensures that you're never caught unprepared for expected life events, like losing your job. After all, it doesn't make sense to prepare in advance for your later years when you're not prepared for emergencies in your current years. Beyond that, make sure that saving for retirement never derails you from staying on your budget every month. It won't do you any good to go into debt in order to save money. Basically, you'll need to balance long-term savings like retirement with shorter-term goals like starting a family or going back to grad school. Women juggle priorities all the time. It's amazing how much you can get done. Prioritizing your financial goals is no different. It's about juggling priorities and coming out on top. And as we have said over and over, retirement savings is a priority. So take a deep breath and start juggling. If you recall from our budget course, your cash flow should look like this. You earn a paycheck, then deduct necessary expenses like rent, and put money aside for savings. Then, once you've covered those needs, the money left over is for you to spend however you like, guilt-free. If you're having trouble saving enough, then something's got to give. Basically, you can either spend less or earn more, whether that means reevaluating your current lifestyle and necessary expenses, or simply working part-time or starting your own business on the side. This is the basic equation. When you're retired, your earning power essentially goes away, and you'll probably be living almost entirely on the money from your retirement savings. We'll discuss Social Security in a little bit, but the bottom line is that you shouldn't put all of your eggs in the Social Security basket. So as outlandish as it may seem, when we say that you should plan to have numbers as high as $1 million saved, understand that you'll need to budget how those savings will cover all of your living expenses for over 20 years. Once you're retired, your savings will pay for your necessary expenses, such as groceries and utilities, as well as your discretionary expenses, like cruises to the Caribbean. And at LearnVest, we hope that our manicures, pedicures, and drinks out with the gals only increase in retirement, not decrease. And all that, plus a little spoiling of the grandchildren and a lot of charitable giving, well, it all adds up. So remember that even during retirement, you'll have a budget. You might have extra room to spend later if you save more today, but you'll still need to remain committed to spending within your means. Luckily, and this is really good news, the sooner you start, the easier it will be to spend your retirement in style. So hopefully we've driven the point home. Retirement savings, especially at a young age, is a priority. But how much will you need to save? Well, like all things in personal finance, the amount that you'll need in retirement is, well, personal. The number largely depends on what kind of lifestyle you imagine yourself having. Let's consider 3 different types of retirement. First is budget living. Budget living isn't inherently a bad thing, but it does mean that you might have to be a very cautious spender. If you took this path, you wouldn't have to save up as much now, but it also means that you'd retire with limited resources and little room for extravagance. You probably wouldn't be able to splurge very much, and you might always have inklings of worry about whether you'll outlive your savings. After all, it can be pretty stressful if, at 80 years old, you're faced with running out of money. Picture this path and ask yourself whether you could make it work. You might be renting a 1-bedroom apartment and could afford hobbies like crafts and volunteering, but you wouldn't have that total freedom of complete financial security. Being comfortable and content is a pretty common goal, and it generally requires you to save enough to keep living at the same level you did before retirement. That way, you wouldn't have to drastically change the standard of living you've been used to for the past 60 some odd years. Here's how it might look. You might have just paid off your mortgage and any final debt like car loans. So now you can afford frequent trips to see grandkids, plenty of social activities, annual vacations, and the occasional splurge. If unexpected costs arise, you are prepared with some emergency savings and a cushion within your nest egg. Turning into a retirement jet setter will require the most savings so that you can afford your champagne, a new car if you want it, your winter condo in Florida, and your annual trips to Europe. Of course, you'd have to work the hardest and save the most to get to this point. But in this scenario, you wouldn't have to worry about inflation, increased healthcare costs, or outliving your savings. And you could probably expect to pass on an inheritance to your family. So when you retire, which of these lifestyles do you picture for yourself? Lots of people think that the jet setter sounds like the most fun retirement, but keep in mind that the more you plan to spend in your golden years, the more you need to save now. So, figuring out how much you need for the future is partly based on the amount of income you earn now and partly based on the lifestyle you want, just like we reviewed. You're going to need a savings account that is big enough to replace some or all of your income during retirement. We call this the replacement ratio. Thinking back to the different lifestyles we just looked at, you will want to aim to replace at least 60% of your pre-retirement income. But chances are high that you would need more. The higher your retirement ratio, the bigger your nest egg needs to be. And when we talk about how much you need to replace, we mean that much per year. So, for example, say that you're making $60,000 now. To simply get by on the budget lifestyle that we discussed earlier, you'll still need 60% of your previous salary per year of retirement. That's $36,000 in today's dollars per year. Now remember that inflation will eat away at the buying power of your dollars, so you'll actually need more money to get the buying power that $36,000 would get you today. 40 years from now, that'd come out closer to $117,000. If your jaw is dropping, you are not alone. We work in personal finance, and even we feel intimidated by these numbers. The idea of saving $1 million may sound bleeping crazy. Not just because it sounds like an incredible or even an impossible amount to save, but also a lot of money to spend. Well, let's take a look at the numbers. Let's say that you need $72,000 per year in future dollars. Like what we just did a moment ago, remember that's only equal to $30,000 in today's dollars. And you're planning to live off of it for 20 years. For that, you need $1 million. And remember, that's to live on the equivalent of $30,000 today. Doable, but not living in the high life per se. But forget about hypotheticals. Let's find your number. In this course, we provide several third-party retirement calculators to run your own number. Whichever calculator you use, you are normally asked similar key questions. How much you earn. This is simple. Just put your current salary or annual earnings. How much you save now for retirement. Input how much you have saved across all of your retirement accounts, including any company match you may have. Sometimes you'll be asked to list them out depending on which account they are saved in. Spend the time doing the extra work. If you have your accounts linked to LearnVest, this step will be easy. If you haven't started saving for retirement yet, be honest with yourself and put 0 here. The next input will be when you want to retire. Be realistic. You'll probably want to plan for mid-60s. Often calculators will ask for your replacement ratio. We suggest you use 70%. From there, try out the calculator like the ones we suggested and see where your number falls. The good news in all of this is that time is on your side. The earlier you start saving, the longer your money will be able to grow and the less you'll need to save. Hang in there, we'll show you how. Doing a retirement calculation each year is a good way to track progress towards long-term goals and actually see how improvements in your savings habits can yield results. If this has all freaked you out a little, make sure to move on to lesson 2 and quickly so you can see that achieving this is not so hard if you plan ahead and start early. So keep it up. You're doing the right thing by becoming informed, even if the task at hand seems daunting. Run the numbers on your own retirement savings needs and move on to lesson 2 so you can see how to attain that number. You're doing great.